Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Talk with Tia and Jill, and a very special guest today. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yes, we are happy to have you here today.
We are. It's our favorite topic: leadership, culture, taking care of people. And Steve, I think when we met, gosh, it's been a few months. Like just hearing you talk about this, like caring and support and how you're doing it over at Johnsonville. That's why we were like, we need you to share this story. So we are so happy to have you with us today. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys asking me to jump on here with you because it's these platforms that let people see a little bit more about what's going on at our little sausage company. I say little because we're 4,000 people,
Not
but
little.
number one sausage company in the United States. So we're big in flavor, small in size is what we'll say, right?
Well, you have to be efficient, right? You have to have strong leadership when you are leading the category, right? We have a small, mighty army behind it.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. And for us, it's always we've had the mindset of how do we use our business to build our members. You know, at Johnsonville, we talk very specifically. We don't have employees; we have members. Right? We're all part of a team, and we're members. And we don't have bosses or supervisors. We have coaches. And to us, coaches isn't a noun; it's a verb. It's what we do every single day. And you think about that in your normal life. As if you have a mentor, you have coaches. Those are the folks that are invested in helping you. So when we think about our coaches at Johnsonville, they have to be invested in helping people grow and develop. So it's a big part of what we are and who we try to aspire to be.
Yes.
See,
Yes.
audience, you can see already why we're like, let's get Steve on here.
Oh, yes.
And share this story.
Yes, we actually had our book club this morning. We have a book club that we do every other month or so, and we read a book called "What You Say Matters." It talks about nonviolent communication, but a piece of that is thinking about how your words, right, impact others and yourself, your mind. So even you switching from thinking about people that work there from employees as members, right? Bosses to coaches, just that shift in communication shifts our mindset, how we show up as leaders, how we show up as people within an organization. So I love that.
We do.
I love that.
Well, and I'm curious for our audience out there, like, have you enjoyed some Johnsonville sausage before?
Yeah, I know I have.
Oh, heck yeah. I'm sure it's in our freezer right now. I grew up in Wisconsin, so we are not buying anything besides Johnsonville.
It is my Italian sausage of choice.
That's good to hear.
It is. And we had not talked about this before, so this is not a planned.
It's not a little ad for Johnsonville, right? But we just love it. So,
and I will say, like, just working in food, to know, right, that my food is being made at an organization that prioritizes, right, and values their people makes me feel better about the food. That's even someone coming from food safety, right? It's like, I know if organizations care about their people, that translates to them care about what they do and how they show up and how they take care of their consumers, right? It just flows all through the organization. So when we met Steve and we started having conversations about culture and leadership, you know, to hear that was like, yes, I will continue. I will continue to buy.
Well, it's interesting. We've been talking about one of our main core values. We have 4 core values, and one of them is learning agility. And something our founder or our owner has really talked about for a long time is anything worth doing well is worth doing poorly. And what he means by that is let's try it. And we don't have to know the right answer the first time out. We'll figure it out as we go, and we'll learn, and we'll get smarter, and we'll learn from our mistakes. And he always talks about we have reserve the right to get smarter. But as we've talked about that value with our members, we'll talk about that of, hey, you know, it is okay to make mistakes. It's okay to try something. But we have 2 areas that we don't allow ourselves to try and fail with, and that's member safety. Right? We don't want to be trying something that we know it could potentially hurt somebody. And the other one is food safety. Those are 2 areas. Those are non-negotiables. Let's make sure we're trying that in a more safe environment. Like prototyping it in our R&D labs, or let's try a new PPE off the line and things like that. So we are about learning agility. Let's make mistakes early, but in human safety and food safety, those are non-negotiables for us. Those are things that we cannot try to fail in, and we have to be super diligent on.
Yes. Love that. Love that. And we have a lot to dig into during our time today. We do want to say hello to our audience. And if you are watching, please put in the chat, say hello. Where are you watching from? And what are you most excited about this talk for today?
Or what's your favorite Johnsonville product?
Put it in the chat. Let us know, because we're probably going to be like, yes, we love that too.
And the age-old question on brats. Boil, grill, boil. Like, what do you do out there, folks? No.
Grill. I'm a grill person.
Me too. Low and slow. I grill those things nice and slow. You don't want the juice coming out. Right? You don't want to make your brat cry on the grill.
Right.
Oh, that's funny. I love it. Well, and if it happens to be your first time joining us, we are so happy that you are spending this time with us today, because here at Catalyst Food Leaders, we are on a mission to empower food industry leaders, because we know when we set people up for success, just like Steve was talking about, when we are committed to their growth and their well-being, that all translates to better business. But it starts with us as individuals being the catalyst to make that change. And while we do talk about food safety a lot, we are more than food safety. We work with operations, maintenance, R&D, engineering, labs, sales, all the areas, because leadership isn't just about being in food safety. So we love doing this work, and we love sharing these type of conversations with you to see, like, how are other people doing it? Like, let's get some insights and let's all be better together.
So with that, Steve, we would love for people who may not know you listening today to introduce yourself and let us know, how did you end up at the top sausage company?
Yeah, so I've been in food most of my adult life. I actually did, my first stint was actually in radio. I was a radio host for about 6 years, but then I got into food with a different food company, and then started looking around. I'd kind of gotten to a spot, always in leadership development type things, and wanted to get more into direct operations and some things. So I was looking for an organization that aligned really close with my values and where my personal heart is. And I found Johnsonville, and it's been an amazing fit. My philosophy and Johnsonville's philosophy of just, they're so interconnected. It was perfect fit. So my role at Johnsonville today is I'm the Senior Director of Learning and Culture. So what that means is I try to inspire our culture and be the catalyst for growth. If we think about still in your guys' title here is, so that's how I got to Johnsonville. That's what I do at Johnsonville. And what got me into working at Johnsonville was really, where can I go and make a difference? At the last organization, I think I was having a big impact, but it was a very large organization of around 24,000 people. And I was in a sub-department of that of around 5,000 people. And I was leading the organizational development leadership in that area. And I started to look around, and what I really like is family owned, private owned, those types of things really attracted me. So that brought me from Minnesota over to Johnsonville in Wisconsin. And it's been 12 years now. I got to do some stint in continuous improvement. And then I went into direct operations. And I think that's a testament to Johnsonville of where we do use our business to build our members. Is I've been offered opportunities to go and explore my other avenues of interest, and then come back now to OD&L, where now I can have a larger impact on the organization. But as long as we're helping Johnsonville become stronger, that provides us as an opportunity as an organization to provide more and more opportunities for our members. So that's kind of what got me here to Johnsonville in the first place.
So, as you talk about that, what comes to mind is when we think about businesses, and usually they have some type of growth plan. But I think what I hear you talking about when it comes to the work you're doing at Johnsonville is you really go, yep, that's our kind of our end game. But we recognize that first we need to build capacity within our people to help move in that direction. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, it really ties back to our overall mission. And our mission at Johnsonville is so unique and it's so distinctive. And when I first read it, it kind of threw me off because I'd never seen an organization with that type of mission. But our mission is to create an environment where everyone is required to fully develop their God-given talents and help others do the same. And I think about that of help me be my best self, if you think about that piece of it. And if I focus on that, that means Johnsonville is going to be a growing, stronger organization. Because you think about it, if we want to use the business to build our members, we have to be growing organization. We have to be growing in market share. We have to help have our profitability growing. All of those things have to happen in order for us to be able to provide more and more opportunities. But at Johnsonville, we absolutely believe culture is upstream of results. If we do the right things in our culture, if we treat members the way that we should be treated, we have this kind of our magnetic north, if you will, is really love your neighbor. And it's what am I doing today to help others be successful? And I always think about this of I need to put the needs and how can I elevate the needs of others, even over my own sometimes, and then monitor the impact that I have on others. I mean, that's the antithesis of what we're talking about. So it is about let's grow our members, let's do these things. And we know that if we focus on that, the business outcomes will come as we drive it. But everything we do has to be driven towards, are we making this organization stronger so we continue to have more and more opportunities for people to grow and develop and fully develop their God-given talents?
Yes. Steve, you are speaking our language. You're speaking our language. And many organizations, many leaders, right, they are so driven by, we need to make profit, right? We need to sell more cases. We need to get more cases out the door, wherever it is that they're focused. But they struggle with those things because they're not actually looking at what's driving it, their culture, right? Yeah. Part of that is how do we support one another? And I love it that you all talk about how do you develop those talents that you have, right? Like those are when you are developing your talents, when you are living truly authentically as yourself, you are so much better than if you are not developing those talents. If they are, they're at a 2 versus a 10, right? Like you're not going to get the most out of that person. We're just going to keep talking about, oh, Tia has this amazing potential, but she just can't do it. Well, we're not developing that potential. We're not putting resources into ensuring that she's stepping into that potential so that we can realize those wins in our profits, in our, growth strategies.
Yeah, one thing we talk a lot about at Johnsonville is, every organization, I think, has a desire to be a great organization, right? But we talk at Johnsonville, we don't want to be a great organization for everybody. We actually want to be a great organization for a very particular type of individual. And we want to be great, and we want to attract the types of individuals that expect nothing less than personal greatness from themselves and others. And when you think about that, that means every day I'm coming in and I have to invest myself on fully developing my God-given talents. But that means I got to talk with Jill and I got to talk with Tia and I got to talk with others around if I see them not doing the things that are fully developing their God-given talents. If I see them kind of defaulting themselves, like taking the easy path. That's why humble candor is one of our other core values of I need to have a very candid conversation with Jill or Tia if I see you headed down a path that I think could be better. But I've got to do it with humility too. If I come talk to you because I think I'm better than you, or I'm your coach, or you need to listen to me because of whatever position I have, rather than a position of caring, you're not going to listen to that. Yeah, we believe in like crucial conversations. We use that a lot. And Joseph Granny talks a lot about if people believe in your intent, they can handle about any content. And we so much believe in that. And that's where humble candor comes from is it's okay for me to say, hey, Tia, I see you doing this. I think you want to be moving this direction because here's the impact. But if I don't do that with caring and humility, you're just going to be like, well, I don't know why you're trying to talk to me. Right. So I think it is so much about that piece. But, I just reiterate, we don't want to be a great place for every single person in the world. We want to be great for the types of members that expect nothing less than personal greatness from themselves and others. It's reflected in our mission. It's reflected in our Johnsonville Way statement, which is kind of our ethos statement. And it's reflected in our 4 values.
Yes. Yeah. And it's hard to get there.
Snaps over here.
Yes.
Well, because I think people go, yeah, everybody wants that, but not everybody can do it. Or people, even as you talked about when you came to Johnsonville, you're like, wow, their values really align with who I am and what I can support and get behind. We get that question all the time when people are like, yeah, it seemed like it when I interviewed, and then I started there, it's not working out.
Yeah.
Or the companies that do say people are our greatest assets, but they don't back it up. And I'm so glad our audience gets to hear, like, this works.
Yes.
Like, it works when you put people at the center of business, and no, business will grow.
Now, if you talk to members, I think at any organization and even at Johnsonville, you're going to run across members that are like, I don't feel that way.
Oh, yes.
But I've seen that that's sometimes a direct correlation, like their coach or how they're visioning how the world should work. The one thing I remember this, I think it was on day 1 through 5 in the first week that I started. I remember a member who's been here for a long time shared this with me. He said, Steve, if you come to Johnsonville and you are trying every day to live our culture, if you're not delivering results, we will try to find a position in the organization that's a better suited to your talents. Might just be a wrong fit, might be a wrong position. But if you come in and you're delivering great, amazing results, but you're not living our culture, we will try everything we can to help you be successful at another organization because it's just not a great fit. And I have seen that at Johnsonville where we have parted ways with people, sometimes on their own accord, sometimes on our accord, that they weren't living the culture, but they were doing great things. I think there's a lot of people that have great success outside of Johnsonville. Sometimes they come to Johnsonville and it just doesn't fit. And then they leave and they have amazing organizational success. Doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It just means it wasn't the right fit for us and the organization. And that's okay. But when we find those, we're going to help you be successful somewhere else, because that's what your culture has to be. If you only talk the culture, but you don't actually live the culture, it doesn't work.
Yes. I think that's a very important point that you bring up, where cultures are different, and there's some great cultures, right, that I just don't naturally align to. Like, it's just, sure, I can be there, I can probably be successful there, but like, it doesn't give me joy because that's not how I naturally live, right? It's not true to my authentic self when other cultures are. Recognizing that, right? And really understanding who you are. Like, we like talking to organizations who are trying to figure this out, to first start with, who do you want to be, right? What is your North Star? How do you want people to interact here? How will people know if this is not the culture for them? How will people know that, right? What would they see every day? And how do you do that with kindness? And I think sometimes we don't have enough conversations around that. And we miss it, right? We're trying to be everything for everyone, but in reality, cultures exist, and we want to sort of create these cultures, but it doesn't mean that everyone will be happy in those cultures. And that's okay.
That's exactly right.
That's okay.
Yep.
So I know you shared a little bit about kind of the values and the mission and kind of how Johnsonville is committed to developing your God-given gifts, and what are those? But I'm also curious, because I imagine stepping into that, not everybody has had an experience where they have, I'm going to say, kind of that responsibility and ownership and support to do that. So how do you help create this environment where people do have this ownership of like stepping into their greatness and knowing that that takes them, and it's not just on their coach or the people around them, even though they're there to support?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. When I think about that piece, it starts with how you screen candidates. It starts with the onboarding and the orientation of, like, on day one, when we bring new members into the organization, we walk through what our culture is, what the Johnsonville Way statement is, what our core values are, and what we aspire to be. And I've talked about 2 of our core values. Another one is personal commitment. I think about everything we have in our last statement of our ethos statement of Johnsonville Way, which you can read online. It's been around. And here's what's really cool about this is that Johnsonville Way statement was written back in the 80s. And if you look at from the 80s version to today's version, there's really about 6 words that have changed. And they're very non-substantive words. There's like we to I, right? So the last statement is, as an individual, I understand the Johnsonville way is about my performance, my accountability to the team, my commitment to stretch, grow, and excel is unending. So when we start talking about that on day one, and we do a lot of things with our coaches to talk about, yes, you as a coach are there to coach your members, to help them through the challenge, to see their potential. Sometimes they're not even going to see it. I know, Tia, you talked about that. Sometimes we have that where I don't even know what my potential could potentially be. I don't know what my God-given talents are. We need to create some environments that are probably going to make you feel uncomfortable, because anytime you've experienced the most growth in your life, any position that you've had the most growth, probably were very uncomfortable in that position during times. You're learning things as we go. So it filters into everything. So every member at Johnsonville, we've started this years and years ago, have what we call a PDC. It's a personal development commitment. Over the next 3 years, what do you want to go after? Now, it's different for members in our production facilities than it is for like our team leaders on up through the organization, through our CEO. It's a very different look to it, right? Our frontline members, they're more focused on kind of the team goals and how do I contribute to help get that team goal. But then every year we have our annual review process. We call it our building people. And again, there it's what are the things that you need to work on? Here's what's going really well. Here's some things you could tweak. So it's kind of woven into everything we do. It's not like we just say when people come in to say, Jill, you need to focus on your development and it's all up to you. No, if I see Jill on the production line or in the office not doing everything she can to be her best version of herself, it's my responsibility to have a conversation with Jill. When we talk about coaching, it's not just like an up down. It's across the organization. I give feedback to our CEO. He gives feedback to me. I don't report to the CEO, but we interact. I can give feedback to folks out on the production line. They can give me feedback. I just had a conversation with a member. They went through some training and they gave me some amazing feedback of things that I did in the presentation workshop. They're like, this could have probably been done a little differently to have a bigger impact. And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. Because it's a gift when people give you that feedback. So when we think about that, Jill, it's in every aspect of kind of from hire to retire, that entire member life cycle. It's got to be woven into it, because otherwise then we're not living our mission as an organization.
Yes. It's not just words on a paper, right? You have tools and processes in place, right? Accountability methods in place to help drive your culture and your goals, your culture goals.
Yes.
That's amazing. And even as we talk about this, I think about how some people are like, I just can't do that. I feel like I can't do that. Or it comes naturally to some people and others, or some people like to think, oh, just go and have conversations with people and make sure you just care about them when you do it. It really does take skill for you to be able to have these conversations, for you to feel, for you to really foster the feelings of inclusion within an organization. And so when I think about how you all are doing it, what are some ways that you are equipping people with these skills? But then even outside of learning, right, just the learning process, why is the application so important on how they're applying the skills that they're learning to your culture, to growth, to development?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Tia. There's two pieces to it. I think there's absolutely the skill side of I need to be skillful at having these conversations. But I think sometimes the even more importantly overlooked is the willingness to have that conversation. And we try to build into folks just the mindset of I need to care more about Tia's success than I do about my discomfort around having that conversation. Because what I found is most people, even if they have the conversation poorly, know how to have the conversation. There's that butterflies in the stomach that you sit back and go, oh, I don't really want to have that conversation.
Yeah.
What I have found, if you don't want to have the conversation, you could develop the skills as much as you want, and you're probably still not going to have it. So we have to address that willingness. And I think that's the piece that comes from wanting people to organization who accept nothing less than personal greatness, right? But then there is the skill side. If you're having conversations and it's not impacting you or it's not getting the outcome, there's lots of things that we do, right? So I talked about the Crucial Conversation course that we encourage. Actually, any member can sign up and go through that course. And it's a 2-day course on how to have conversations. We have other courses around key principles around effective communication. How do you maintain or enhance self-esteem? How do you respond with empathy? How do you provide the feedback? Using some processes like we use the situation, task, action, result. So there's lots of training that's out there, both classroom, and then we also have some online that you can take. We try to equip our coaches with just asking the question. So I think about this. Let's say we'll use the 3 of us in here, and Jill and Tia, just for this scenario, I'm your coach. So let's say Tia has an issue with Jill, and in traditional ways, Tia comes and talks to me, her coach, and says, hey, Jill's doing A and B, and it's driving me crazy. It's causing problems. And in a lot of organizations, I will take that and say, you know what, let me go talk to Jill for you about that.
Right. Yeah.
That is the absolute wrong thing, because as soon as I talk to Jill, I have automatically destroyed part of your relationship, because now you guys can't go back. But then it's the question of, Tia, did you talk to Jill about that? And it's amazing if you turn that just a little bit, put a little bit more expectation in it. Just think about this question. If I change the question from, Tia, did you talk to Jill about this, to, Tia, what did Jill say when you gave her that feedback? It just sets the expectation. You've already had the conversation.
Right.
And when Tia says to me, oh, I haven't had that conversation, now I can get into coaching. What's holding you back? What worries you about that conversation? How can I help you with it? Would you like to role play it a little bit? So there's lots of that we can do in the classroom, out of the classroom. But I kind of go back to what you were talking about before, of kind of waiting sometimes for others and for them to take the first step. And I always think about this. What am I waiting for? Too many times I've seen myself or others waiting for others to either trust me or to show me respect or to do the right thing, to make the right move before I do it. And if I'm waiting on somebody else, I've got to model the behavior that I expect in others. So I got to ask myself, what am I waiting for? And we have a really important question that we try to ingrain into the mindsets of folks at Johnsonville is, what am I doing or not doing that's causing this issue? Because if I've got an issue with Jill, there's things I'm doing in that to cause some of that strife and some of that, whatever the case is. But there might be things I'm also not doing. One of the biggest things is I might not be giving her feedback. She might be doing something that's driving me crazy, and I've never talked to her about it. Well, that's on me. That's not on Jill. So does that answer your question, Tia?
Yes, it does. It does. That's awesome. And again, you have these tools, right, to reinforce this learning and this application of these leadership skills, right? I love your example, right? And what happens if I take that myself and move forward, right? What are the unintended consequences, right, that might happen? And we talked a little bit about unintended consequences even during our prep time. That might happen when you're just trying to help, right? Like, well, let me go talk. Let me go and do this. And it could be from a good place. But I love the way that you all are really thinking about true coaching, right? Peer coaching and on like, well, what did she say about this? How can I help? Let's talk about the barriers, right? Let's talk about, and I love that. I love it because you're growing that person too.
Yeah. That's one of our favorite questions that we talk about, even in our leadership boot camp, is like, how are you contributing to what you see? Because so often, I think, like you said, we've been taught in traditional management organizational models, you just pass that off to the person and then they go take care of it. But that really takes away your personal power to grow and lean into that and have that conversation. So having someone guide you through that just helps you be prepared for the next one too.
Yes.
As we were talking about that, Tia, I think the other piece that you asked was around, why is application so important of any learning? But before I do that, I want to share that question that I said, here's a better way to ask it. The best part about that came from a member on our production floor. I was teaching a class on giving and receiving feedback, and they brought that up and said, hey, I think this is a better way to respond. I was like, oh my gosh. So what I love is we're learning from everybody in the organization. But when you think about application, I have seen many, many folks go through our leadership development courses or through a crucial conversation, and then they're still not having the conversation. And to me, I like to end almost every one of my training sessions in this manner of, think about, you just came and you spent however long, an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours a day, whatever it is, in this, learning this content. Now, what I think about with that is, where could you have been? You could have been out on the production floor, could have been in team meetings, you could have been helping your members solve problems.
Yeah.
So you invested that time. Johnsonville invested that time in you, and your team kind of gave you the okay to go be away from what the day-to-day work is. They were probably dealing with problems while you were sitting in here. It's unjust to them if you don't do anything with this. Okay. If you go back and say, well, that was great, but I don't need to apply it. So I think it's not just at Johnsonville. I've seen it at other organizations, is the biggest thing holding us back is we hear all this great stuff, or we've been in training sessions, go, oh yeah, I need to do more of that. But then we go back and our behaviors don't change.
Right.
And to me, it's the application is the most important. I would rather offer less leadership development and have everybody apply it really deep, right? I have the mindset, let's go an inch wide and a mile deep, rather than let's offer everything and just kind of hope that people apply it. To me, application is what it has to be all about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the reasons that for the clients that we have partnerships with, it's exactly what you're talking about, where you're learning these concepts. And then how do we spend a period of time practicing, reflecting, right? Because one of the reasons, and we hear this a lot too from people who's in our leadership courses, because we practice and reflect a lot during that time, is I've been really busy this week, right? I've been really busy. I haven't really practiced this piece. And we like to highlight, you are busy. What missed opportunities did you have to have a difficult conversation, but you took a step back because I'm busy over here, right? I'm doing this work over here, even though that's an opportunity to step in and give feedback, or an opportunity to listen to feedback, or to engage differently, right? Or to use an influence method. You have opportunities to practice, but the hard part is we're not really wired, or let's just say we were rewired to only think about our goals and execution, when we have to rewire back our minds, because we do this as children, on how do I listen, take in this information, and then apply those things. Like I see my 2-year-old daughter, she'll be 3 in April. Like she'll take something and then she says it over and over, right? Or she might say it wrong here, and then I'm like, oh, instead of like sung, it's sing, and she's like, oh, sing, and I hear her say sing multiple times, and she's practicing in sentences. Like that's just naturally how we learn and sort of imprinted in our brain. And then we're socialized. And then we are trying to go back as leaders to say, how do I just listen and apply and fail and apply, right? And apply. Yeah. And you're right. People don't spend that time on it.
Yeah.
Well, to even go further, like when we were doing our prep, you had talked about, like, as humans, right? We barter away a day of our lives for something, like every day, right? We're doing something here. So I'm curious, as you think about leaders, how do you help ensure that they're spending it wisely? Because we only get this much time with the people around us in this workspace. How do we do that to make sure we're spending it wisely?
Yeah, I think that's a tricky spot, and it's a different question for every leader. I think back to what you were talking about, Tia, of when I take a course or I read a book or whatever the case is, I have a conversation with somebody and I get some feedback, whatever the case is, how do I blend that into my day-to-day? Not, oh, now I need to try to do that as well. It's like, no, I just went through this. Okay, how do I have more effective conversations as I go through the day? How do I show more sincere caring? How do I try to give more reinforcing feedback along the way? How do I ask? Whatever the case is, you have to try to build it into your day-to-day life. So I do talk about that a lot. I write this leadership note every month, send it out to everybody in the organization. It's just to be thought-provoking. And one of the things I talk about is every day, this is something from Ralph Stayers. Every day we barter away of our day of our life to become something. So what are we doing? And I always think about, there's this old kind of story around the carrot, the egg, and the coffee. And it's this lesson that this mother is trying to teach her daughter. And she's in the kitchen, and there's 3 pots of boiling water. And in one she puts carrots, and one she puts eggs, and the other she puts some coffee beans. And as they boil, they change, right? Because we're all dealing with, whether it's a new environment, whatever the case is. And when she gets done, she asks her daughter, well, what did you notice? Well, to make a long story short, the carrot goes in very hard, and then it gets very soft as it goes. So it's when you are you approaching change with very hard, like, I can't do this. And then as you go through it, you kind of get softened out, and you maybe take too soft of an approach. Think about an egg, very soft and fragile, comes out of the boiling water very hard. And then you take about the coffee beans. What that does is it transforms the environment into something completely different. It no longer is just the coffee bean, and now it's coffee. It's something completely different. So when you think about leaders, we have that ability every day of, do I come in too hard? Am I coming in too soft? Am I leaving it too soft? Am I leaving it, whatever the case is? Or are you coming in and altering the circumstances for the better, even in our darkest moments? So when I think about that piece of it, every day you have the ability to make an impact on people's lives. And sometimes you don't even know how a small comment, for the good or the bad, could impact somebody for days and weeks ahead. So I think about that piece of it. That I read a book that I get from my CEO a few years ago, and the last sentence in there kind of stuck in my head. And it was, now I'm going to change it to Johnsonville eyes, but in the book it was, be the boss you wish you had. So I always change it to be the coach I wish I had. And I think on that, I ponder that of, am I the coach my members wish they had? And I'm sure there's days where they're like, absolutely not. But I'd like to think that there's days in the feedback they've given me that, yes, I am.
Yeah.
So I think about that piece of it is, every day I have the choice to make a difference in how we do it, to be a better leader, to be a worse leader. And I have to reflect on that. You guys talked about that a little while ago. Are you taking time to reflect on, how did that conversation go? How did I present myself in that meeting? We just didn't meet our numbers. How did I go after that? Was it an attack or was it an approach? But when I think about that, of everything is, we barter the days away, whether we're here for good or whether we're just going through the motions. But have a purposeful approach to what you're trying to accomplish today. Because I don't believe that life is about discovering who you are. I think life is about creating who you want to become. And every day I have that chance to do that.
Yes. I think it's really powerful to think about that, right? Because time feels, infinite, but it is not, right? And so when you think about it in that case, and that's even with, hey, I know that I'm not going to be the coach of this team forever, right? Like, for many of us, that is the case. Or, for all of us, right? Even if you're going to retire in that role, one day you're going to retire. Yeah. And so how are you contributing, right, to the space while you're here? Or are you a barrier, right? Are you a barrier to success? Or are you pushing back too much that really we're starting to move back versus go forward? Each of us have that power to kind of think about, where do we want to be in this equation?
Yeah. I had a conversation with a member. They've now since retired, but this was when I first started. So it was about 10 years ago. And we were talking just in a normal one-on-one. And we started talking about legacy. We started talking about retirement. And it was basically, in every day, in every way, in every interaction, I am building my legacy. And I need to be intentional and purposeful about that. So I'd ask him, I said, when you think about your retirement, 10 years down the road, what do you want people to say about you? And even more importantly, the week, month, year after you're gone, what do you want people to still remember about you?
Yes.
What is it? Because that's what we need to start working on today to build, so that when you leave at some point, because we're all going to do that, right? Whether it's for another company or whether you're going to retire, whatever the case is, there is an end point to our work lives. But you leave behind that legacy of how you've made people feel and how you interacted with people and things like that.
That's big. That's a tool that I've used even for members in your case that are looking to retire, and they've kind of gotten to this point of like, not really wanting to be involved, not really, just unengaged. I've had a team member that was like that. And I remember saying to him that, first of all, I need your expertise, as the team leader, but also think about, what do you want to leave? What do you want your legacy to be? That's literally what I put out to him. What do you want your legacy to be on this team? You've been on this team for years, 20 years. What do you want your legacy to be? And I saw that shift in his mind where he wanted to be more involved because he wanted to leave behind a legacy. And, I just kind of threw that out to him because, I need him to move forward. But just the impact that question had on him and had him thinking about his job differently was more impactful than I thought as a young leader would even make.
Yeah. Well, I think that all goes back to, Steve, the whole part of you talking about like discovering who we are. There may be things that draw us to that, but don't forget, we can also create who we want to be and what that future is and what our legacy can be. And when we put it in that framework, it might give us just this different perspective to kind of motivate us in that way a little bit differently than maybe what we originally had connected with.
And you can leave a legacy even without retiring, right? Moving to a different group, you leave behind a legacy. Moving companies, right? It's so funny. People still call me from a company. I saw your name on this. I'm like, please update the names, like my name should not be on anything at this point there, but it's just a form that I created, whatever, and my name's on it. But it's like, you can leave a legacy wherever you are. So thinking about, Steve, to your point on like, what am I doing every day, right, to contribute to this environment that I want to leave behind?
I think it comes back to the thought when you say that about, leaving that legacy of, I think it's even bigger than that, right? It's not just what legacy am I leaving behind at work, but it's what impact am I having? I always joke with our kids. We have 4 children, and all the way from 35 down to 18. So ours are getting on the 19. She just had her birthday. But I was thinking about that of my job as a parent, as a father, was to help them be productive members of society, right? And that doesn't just mean you go out and you earn a job and you get an income. It's that you're purposeful in what you do. And I remember my son came home from high school and he was, 16 or 17, and he and a teacher were having a disagreement. And my son at the time was a normal teenager and responded with probably some sass and was disrespectful in the teacher's mind. So when we had our teacher conference, he brought it up. And so I went home and talked to my son, and it's like, I was having a conversation with your teacher today, and it sounded like you guys had an interaction that probably didn't go as well as either of you would have hoped. And he defaulted to, yeah, Dad, I know I need to respect him because I'm a teacher. And I stopped him like, no, that's not the point here. You don't respect him because he's your teacher. You respect him because you aspire to be a respectful person. It doesn't matter who it is. So I think about that every day. Like when I'm at the grocery store and somebody cuts in front of you at the last moment, allowing them that little bit of a grace. Like, I have no idea what's been going on in their day.
Right.
But I can choose how I want to react to that. When somebody cuts me off in the traffic line, does it frustrate everybody? Absolutely. But I can also decide, how do I want to respond to that? So I think that legacy piece is, it's yes, how do I want to be as a member at Johnsonville, but what do I want my kids to remember when I was growing up? And it's, I think, next to impossible to completely disconnect your work life and your home life. Because if you try to be completely different people, and I hear people say, well, at work, I'm different than I am at home. And I don't know, if I have a bad day at work, that tends to come home with me.
Right.
If I have a great day at work, I tend to have a better night at home. So if we as coaches can help our members have more great days, it impacts their families, it impacts their children, it impacts their community. So, it gets maybe a little bit, maybe a little Pollyanna if I think about it. But if we can create a great culture at Johnsonville and help everybody feel valued, respected, heard, and understood, I think that's going to make the world a better place.
100%. 100%. It's one of the reasons we're in this line of work, is that passion around how do we create our best selves and live our best lives, a part of that is work. We have to have better work experiences in order to have better life experiences.
Yeah.
It's just connected. Maybe one of those unintended connections for someone that decided to create a sausage company, right? That's what they wanted to do, but you employ people, and from that you impact their lives. And so to focus on helping strengthen that is important, because that helps when I cut them off accidentally and they're like, let me give this person grace because maybe she didn't see me, or maybe she's having a bad day. Like, that interaction is so much better than if someone's like, hey, or says something mean or hits me, or, escalates, right? There's a million things that could happen that's just not positive when we think about a productive society even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always think about that at work too, is, there's from Crucial Conversations, there's this kind of mindset of when somebody does something that irritates you, or that you're like, why would somebody do that? It's just asking the question, why would somebody who has a reasonable, rational person and has a mother that loves them do something like that? Because I think if I cut somebody off, and most of the time, if not all the time, it's because I didn't see them, or something happened, I was distracted or whatever. But I'm willing to give myself a lot of grace. I'm like, oh, geez, I wasn't thinking. But when somebody else does it, but I think about that same thing at work. If somebody responds negative to me, I'm probably less likely to give them the grace that I would want them to give to me. And that's where that love your neighbor and that golden rule comes into play of how do we share that feedback of, hey, Jill, when you did this is how it made me feel. I just wanted you to know. What you do with that information is up to you, but I just thought you'd want to know. Yeah. But I've got to want that back too. And if I don't receive that feedback, well, I mean, I think about that, like the TFU came to me and gave me some feedback, and my face was all like, I don't even want to hear this or whatever. Chances are you're not going to give me feedback again. So if I don't receive the feedback well, and I think about this, it's everything and everywhere we go.
Yes,
it is. Yeah, and that reminds me of like kind of the we and they, and when we can be like, wow, I've been in a hurry like they have been. They're just like me. Wow, they've had bad days just like me.
Yeah,
you can have the just like me. It's amazing how you can be like, that little bit of I see myself in them, and I've been there too.
Yeah,
it can be super powerful.
Ooh, that's fantastic. Just like me. I like that, Joe.
Yeah. We've got some culture workshops coming up. I'm going to steal that.
You should.
Because I think it's a great thing when we talk about that concept of, when people at any organization I found talk about the culture isn't working, or it's usually they aren't doing this, and they could be anybody, right? It could be my other member down the line. It could be my coach, could be the CEO, could be me. But I love that thought of, how do we look at it? Like, hey, you know what? Yes, they did that just like me.
Just like
they have tough days, just like me.
Yeah. Just like me, I've ignored things, or I've let things fly, or I've missed the boat, or all those things that seem to create the feelings of like the value matter, seen, heard, all of those things.
Oh, I love that. So Steve, we have covered a lot today, and I'm curious, what would you say to the audience, your 2 or 3 takeaways for them?
I think, and I've had this on my email for quite a while, and I just recently changed it, but I think about, and I tell myself this a lot. I talk to my kids about this and my members. You are 100%. So I am 100% responsible for how my life turns out. What I make out of my life, my happiness, my relationships, my success, my health, my wealth, everything's in my hands. And I can influence and create my life the way I want it to be. I just have to take responsibility for myself. And then I have to have the courage to go out and make it happen. So if I approach everything in that way, it kind of goes back to what you just talked about, Jill. It's just like me. Right? Everybody out there is living their life to the best that they think they can, just like I do. Yeah. The other thing is, I think it's about modeling. We can try to teach things. We can try to teach culture, but I don't think you teach culture. I think you observe culture, you witness culture, you experience culture. So how do I model the behavior that I want to see in others? Yeah. Because if I want you to do it and I'm not willing to do it, I'm not being a great teacher.
Right.
And then thirdly, we've talked about this already, but give yourself the same amount of grace that you give everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if I'm going to be willing to give myself that grace, I've got to be willing to extend that to you.
Yes.
And so those are probably those three things. You're responsible for everything you do. You model the behavior and give others the same amount of grace that you would give to yourself.
I love that. And if you're listening and you want to move your culture forward, I would say start with these 3 takeaways, because just that alone, people will see, right? And I agree with you when you talk about culture. It's something to observe, witness, and to be a part of, right? Experience. And to model those behaviors that you want to see is like the number one thing. So start there. What behaviors do you want to see, and how do you do it? How do you do it? Not everyone else. How do you do it?
Yeah. Whew, powerful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
See, our hour goes pretty quick. And I know we're not quite at the end, but we're getting there. So we have loved having this conversation. And like Tia said, if you're out there and you're like, how do I make a difference? How do I move this forward? Share some more insights while you're in store. We have a virtual leadership summit coming up on April 2nd, and it's free. But it's more of these type of conversations, but with an incredible group of people that, like Steve, all work in food. Because leading in food, while the principles are all the same, we're not automotive, we're not healthcare. There's a little bit of a difference in what we do and how we apply it. And so that's what you're going to get immersed in for that 4-hour period. So join us. I'll drop the link in the notes when we're done so you can grab that and register, but it's also out on our webpage. We'd love for you to be there.
Yes. We're excited about that one because we, just like Steve, Steve, your comments are just, they resonate with me in the work that we do, because we know that leadership, how we show up, drives culture, and that culture drives business results, right? Like that, and that's why we all work, right? Is to get our business results, right? Grow our company. And if we just start with the development of ourselves and making sure we have the skills, right, that we are showing up the way that we should, that drives all of those pieces, right? Things start to fall into place.
Yeah. I think about that piece. We all want to be successful, I think, but we all define that differently. But I think about, we're right in the middle of our merit increases and compensation. So I think about that every year as members and as employees of any organization. Every year it's like, okay, I'm looking for a nice raise. I want to see some more. Well, those things are only capable or available if the organization is growing, right? You think about if the organization's profits are going down, it makes it really hard every year to go, let's give everybody an increase in their wages. So it's, what am I doing today to make Johnsonville, in my case, a stronger, better organization? And that doesn't just mean culturally. It also means financially. It also means, sustainability wise, all of those types of things. I need to be focused on all of those to better prepare the organization to get back to our mission, help everybody fully develop their God-given talents. So if every day I'm coming in and doing my best to try to help Johnsonville first, my team second, and then I put my individual needs third, I can't help but be successful, because there's more and more opportunities for me to be successful.
Right. Yes. Steve, if people want to get in touch with you and talk more, how would they reach you?
Yeah, so you can go on LinkedIn and find me there. And my email is super difficult. It's just S and then my last name @johnsonville.com. Feel free to email me. It's a really easy process to find me if you're out looking. But yeah, LinkedIn, Steve Sorenson, Johnsonville, and you'll come right across me. I'm the guy with the white beard. You'll find me.
And we have you linked to this event, so you can easily click you and connect as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It has been an honor having you on and sharing this and letting people see, like, it's real. This can happen. And hopefully inspiring them to take the next step as well and kind of step into that ownership and the greatness that they have.
Well,
and thank you to our audience. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, I'm honored. Thank you, ladies, for inviting me in and let me talk a little bit about kind of my beliefs and how at Johnsonville we're trying to do these things. And Johnsonville is an amazing organization. And if you haven't found your favorite sausage, keep trying because they are all fantastic. But yeah. So thank you, ladies, for letting me come in.
Yes.
Thank you for being here. And yes, thank you to our audience as well for being here and showing up and prioritizing yourself, right, in your development. We would love to hear your feedback. So please comment or send us a message because we would love to connect with you as well.
Yes. And of course, we will be back. So stay tuned for the next Real Talk and make it a great week.
Absolutely. See you April 2nd as well, the Leadership Summit.
Absolutely.
Bye, everyone.